Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Oh, it's the last day of July. I'm so bummed. I love the month of July. It's the heart of summer. Anyhow, it's a new day. It's a gift from God, and we will embrace it. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, and we will certainly do that on the program this morning here on EWTN. Thanks for tuning in on a Wednesday. Do hope you're enjoying the beautiful summer months. We have a great lineup for you. We have a wonderful discussion planned with Matt Zerrusen. He's president and CEO at Newman Ministry, and it's that time of year, moving into August, when the young people are heading back or heading into college, and we're going to help them stay faithful. We'll have some great ideas from Matt. And then Joan Lewis is going to join us for two segments. She's going to be part of our Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, because there's so many wonderful activities and events and gatherings going on in Rome this week for the Jubilee of Youth, taking place of the Jubilee year. And so Joan has some special stories she wants to share, as well as taking a look at the messages the Holy Father and other church leaders have been giving to these young people, which has been absolutely amazing. Now, it was really cool. I saw a story on, I think it was Catholic News Agency this morning, that the Pope, at the audience this morning, gave a shout out to the EWTN interns that are there for their summer program. Can you imagine those kids being in the audience and hearing the Holy Father mention that? That must have been such a thrill. I just thought that was really cool, so I wanted to throw that out there. There is a story on there about it, and it's a wonderful program for young people. They come into Rome and they work with the news team at EWTN in Rome, in the Rome Bureau. I was asked to speak. I was so bummed. I was asked to speak this summer by my friend Anthony, one of the videographers there who organizes the event. And, of course, we had to get back here for other reasons. But I said, maybe next year, God willing. But it's a great program. I've had the daughter of friends of ours who went through it, and she loved it. And they learn how to do live shots, and they learn how to write, and they are asked to do news stories, and they are asked to develop their own story ideas. So it's really good hands-on experience, and you get to be in Rome and learn more about how the church operates. So anyway, take a look at that story. It's really, really cute, and how exciting for those students and for the Pope to give us a shout as well. So Joan joins us for two segments this morning in the first hour of the program. Very, very excited. And again, as I said, we will take a look at the Pope's messages for the Jubilee, and also his continued concern for the situation in the Middle East and other war-torn areas. Now, speaking of all things Italy and speaking of travel, I did want to mention I've been getting quite a few emails from people interested in signing up and going beyond the wait list, the interest list for our tour next year, God willing, in the fall, with our very own Dr. Matthew Bunson. Matthew and I are going to be doing a beautiful Dolce Fide trip in the footprints of the popes, and it's very, very unique. Yes, you will see Rome. Yes, you will see some major sites, including Orvieto and also the beautiful medieval town of Viterbo, known as the City of the Popes. But we're also taking you behind the scenes in the life of the papacy. For example, we're going down to Castel Gandolfo, to the summer residence there. We're going to have an event at the Vatican Gardens. We're going to be walking a secret passageway that's now open to the public between Castel San Angelo in Rome and the Vatican. Again, we're going to Viterbo. We're also going to Orvieto, and we're going to Arezzo, which is also known as another city of the popes with a lot of history, and that is in Tuscany. So you really get a flavor of Italy. You get Lazio, Umbria, and Tuscany in one trip. That's next October, and if you go to teresatomeo.com, my events page, or if you go to Facebook, my Facebook page, and also travelitalyexpert.com, all the information is there, and you can now register. We were taking names the last couple of weeks for people who are interested. So those of you who are interested, it's available now, and I'm sure corporate travel will be reaching out to you. But Dr. Bunson and I are so excited about being able to do a pilgrimage together. We've been talking about it for years. And with his expertise on the Pope, of course, including the great book that he just released about Pope Francis, it is going to be very exciting, I'm sure, to have him along to talk about the history of the papacy. What's going on with the weather? Well, there were some scary moments you probably heard. They were watching potential tsunami impacts across the Pacific Basin. A strong earthquake in the Pacific Basin generating a tsunami wave. Tsunami warnings and advisories have been issued for Hawaii, portions of Alaska, Guam, America, Samoa, and the West Coast. Now, my understanding, we'll have an update on this in the news, is that those warnings for Hawaii have been tempered somewhat, so there isn't any longer a threat. But we'll continue to monitor that situation. That's what we're looking at weather-wise, including a lot of heat across parts of the country, continuing especially on the East Coast. Right now, it's already 5 minutes past the hour. Let's get started with the news. It is a Wednesday morning, July 30th, the last day of this month here on EWTN. And we'll talk more about this with Joni at the bottom of the hour. Wednesday seeing the conclusion today of the Holy Father's catechetical series on the public life of our Lord, which he described as being marked by encounters, parables, and healings. Addressing the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square for his general audience, the Pope brought everyone's attention to the present, noting that this time we are living through also needs healing. He described today's world as being marked by a climate of violence and hatred that deeply wounds human dignity. Our society, he said, is growing ill, not from isolation, but from a kind of overload. He was talking about this, of course, to the young people that were there. We are hyper-connected, bombarded by images, sometimes false or distorted. And social media, he warned, has produced a kind of emotional bulimia, where too much input leaves us exhausted and confused. In the midst of this, many feel tempted, he said, to shut down and might even prefer to feel nothing at all. He said, noting that words themselves are increasingly fragile. Now, bringing his address to a close, the Pope reminding us that true communication is not only about being effective, but rather it is about healing, about not hurting others with our words. Speaking correctly is the beginning of a journey, he added. And this journey, he said, leads us to Jesus himself through his passion and cross. Let us ask the Lord, concluded the Pope, to heal our way of communicating and to help the Church remain a place where every person can hear his word, be healed, and also become a messenger of his salvation. And in his prayer intentions for the month of August, Pope Leo says we need that to be societies where coexistence seems more difficult, might not succumb to the temptation of confrontation for ethnic, political, religious, or ideological reasons. In the prayer that follows, Pope Leo recalls that we stand in Jesus' presence in need of his peace. Michael Kastner tells us in other news this morning, Harvard turning over the records of thousands of employees to the Trump administration.
A Tuesday email from Harvard's Department of Human Resources says the Ivy League school was providing the employee data as the Department of Homeland Security conducts a review of its operations. Harvard has been targeted by the Trump administration over allegations that it's allowed anti-Semitism to go unchecked on campus. I'm Michael Kastner.
3 West Virginia parents won the first round in their fight for religious exemptions to school vaccination requirements. Raleigh County Judge Michael Frobel granting a preliminary injunction saying the state's compulsory vaccination law needs a religious exemption to be constitutional. The parents believe they should not elevate a man-made vaccine over God's perfect design. State education officials stress the ruling only applies to these 3 families and won't affect other students. Sarah Lee Kessler explains we are beginning to learn more about 3 people killed in Monday's shooting rampage in Midtown, in addition to the fallen New York Police Department officer.
43-year-old Wesley LePatner was a Blackstone real estate executive, wife, and mother. She was a Yale graduate who served on several high-profile boards, including the Metropolitan Museum, UJA Federation of New York, and the Abraham Joshua Heschel School. Julia Hyman, a 27-year-old Rudin management employee just 5 years out of Cornell University, was also murdered, along with the beloved lobby security guard, Alain Etienne. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
New York City police, meanwhile, investigating a possible associate of the suspect behind the shooting, now that those 4 people dead, including a police officer. Mayor Eric Adams saying pieces of the semi-automatic rifle used in the killings were bought by an associate of the suspect, Shane Tamura.
It is undetermined at this time if he played any role at all in planning or carrying out this action.
Adams calling it an evolving investigation. Reports say Tamura appeared to be targeting the NFL headquarters and had a note claiming he suffered from CTE, a brain disease linked to playing football. And the body of that New York police officer killed in Monday's mass shooting in Midtown Manhattan was moved to a mosque in the Bronx. A dignified transfer with scores of officers lined up to pay their respects to Mr. Islam. It began late Tuesday afternoon when his body was removed from the medical examiner's office. The 36-year-old was off duty and working his second job as a private security guard when he was shot in the lobby of 345 Park Avenue. He's a native of Bangladesh, and he served with the New York Police Department for 4 years. He had a wife and 2 children and a 3rd child on the way. Purple bunting is now hanging at the 47th precinct where he was assigned. No word yet on services. Sarah Lee Kessler tells us today will be day 3 of a heat wave that is gripping New York, and Governor Kathy Hochul is urging residents to take precautions.
Hochul is urging New Yorkers to take precautions in the face of poor air quality and extreme heat that's making temps in the 90s feel more like triple digits. The governor reminding people to stay hydrated, limit outdoor activity, and head to a cooling center if they don't have air conditioning. She's also announcing that state parks, including those with swimming and cooling facilities, have extended hours during the heat wave to help New Yorkers beat the heat. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
And it's been a long, restless night for folks in Hawaii, where a tsunami warning has now been reduced to an advisory. A tsunami alert triggered yesterday after a massive magnitude 8.8 earthquake off the coast of Russia sent shockwaves across the Pacific Ocean. Local officials in Hawaii are urging residents and tourists along the coast to evacuate and move to higher ground. No major damage reported, though some boats are pushed onto dry land. The west coast was next up to see the waves. A sailboat that collided with a barge in Biscayne Bay in Florida near Hibiscus Island Monday has now been removed from the water. U.S. Coast Guard Captain Frank Lorio says a crash killed 2 girls, a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old, and 2 children now remain in critical condition.
We were not comfortable answering that yesterday. Through some of our investigative work and some of the interviews we conducted, we do believe all of the girls were wearing life jackets. Again, our investigation needs to confirm that.
A 12-year-old girl and a 19-year-old Miami Youth Sailing Foundation camp counselor, they were not seriously hurt. The Coast Guard and Florida Fish and Wildlife are investigating. And when the first school bell rings in less than 2 weeks in Florida's Broward County, cell phones will have to remain switched off. School board members did agree to revisit an update to the district's cell phone policy to allow high schoolers to reconnect during lunch.
I do agree that excessive use of cell phones is problematic. I also agree that use of cell phones during instructional time is also problematic. However, complete banning of the use of cell phones, in my opinion, is also problematic.
That's Dr. Jeff Holness, who argues the students today need immediate communication with loved ones, quick research, and stress reduction. Opponents say it takes time for children to refocus on their work. And school board member Adam Severo says teachers have told him children use their phones during lunch, and it costs them 5 to 12 minutes.
They got to get the kids to turn the phone off. Then they got to get the kids to refocus, and they got to get them to put the phone away. And all of this is costing our students instructional time.
The current policy for high schools only allows cell phone use with teacher permission for educational purposes. State law banning elementary and middle schoolers from using cell phones at any time during the day. And finally, in our news segment at about 13 minutes past the hour on a Wednesday morning, the last day of July, consumer confidence edging higher in July. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index improving 2 points as inflation fears eased. The board's senior global economist noting a slight improvement in overall confidence, which continues to rebound from April's plunge. Purchasing plans for cars and homes, though, slipping in July, along with vacation intentions and plans for personal travel. Well, some young people will be traveling back to college or going to college, starting their college years. How do you keep them faithful? Well, we've got some ideas coming up next. Stay tuned. Okay, so I don't know why I thought today was the last day of July. But my esteemed producer, Richard, said, T, check your calendar. It's tomorrow. What can I say? I'm a dork sometimes. More times than not. Anyhow, it's July 30th. Tomorrow is the last day of July. Woohoo! We have 2 more full days. I'm so excited because I love July. And I love helping everyone learn more about the Lord and stay faithful. And that's what Newman Ministry is all about, especially when it comes to our young people. On the phone with us is Matt Zerrusen, President and CEO at Newman Ministry. Good morning, Matt. And let's talk, first of all, just give us like a general overview if people aren't familiar with your ministry. The website is newmanministry.com.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm glad we got an extra day in July.
Yeah. Yeah. I kept saying today's the last day. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and I've got 2 grade schoolers we got to get back to school. And, you start thinking about it and you're kind of sad, and you're like, gosh, the house is going to be so quiet, and, they're not up yet. But, ask me again in 2 hours, I'll probably have the exact opposite answer. I'm like, okay, let's start August tomorrow. But, so Newman Connection is a program that we started back in 2009 after an invitation to St. John's Catholic Newman Center at the University of Illinois. Not having gone to college myself, I got invited to the Newman Center over there by a Catholic priest and was just enamored and amazed by what I saw. And so after that invitation, I just decided, campus ministry and helping with this transition from high school to college. I saw so many of my friends leave high school Catholic and then went off to college and came back and just weren't practicing the faith anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, the national stat is around 80%, which is crazy. We have to.
That is really crazy. That's really crazy. That's that high. That figure is astounding.
It is, I know, but when you get on these campuses and you look around, I'm sure you share stories about this, but
oh yeah,
you get on the news and it's like universities aren't exactly what Newman envisioned them to be. In fact, they're almost downright hostile to the faith anymore. So, you've got to have these campus ministries on campus, and you got to start building communities, and you got to help us transition from high school to college in order to get our students into, a welcomed faith community before you really get on campus, ideally. And so that's our mission here at Newman Connection, just to help bridge that gap. Faith forward, we call it, moving your faith forward from high school to college.
So how do you do that? What are some of the actions, activities, events that you have in order to help that process go smoothly?
So it sounds simple, but the easiest thing, that the way the program really works, is you can get online, you can work through your high school. We work in about a little over half of the Catholic high schools in the country, or you can work it through your parish. But you sign up through Newman Connection, you enter some information about yourself, and then it gets passed on to the campus minister. And so the big thing that we've introduced this year, I'm in Texas, I'm calling in from Dallas, mm-hmm. And what I always tell parents or anyone is, if you're a football player here in Texas and you can play, every college coach knows who you are.
Right.
But if you're a dynamic, really good Catholic, and we don't know who you are, we don't have any way of identifying you. So that's wrong, and that's what we're trying to solve. Let's try to get this invitation from high school to college to happen so that it can be more like what we experience in sports and all other avenues where they're getting even recruited in. It's like, hey, we want you to come to our ministry. And it's not, join us on Sunday for Mass. It's, hey, why don't you come? Let's have a coffee. Let's talk about, your life, what you're looking for, and tie that into the ministry and the community component.
And if it's not, let's say, the issues of the world and pushing political agendas and horrible things that go against church teaching, it could be that there are, some very strong evangelical efforts on campus that may try to, and they don't do that too much anymore, but I've heard of different groups, fundamentalists on campus trying to pull Catholics out of the church. And so that's another issue that still exists, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's noise everywhere. You get it from, different denominations, different faiths. You get it from fraternities. Fraternities and sororities are the ones that we really, I wouldn't say battle. There are some good ones, in principle out there. But it's just all that noise. The first 2 weeks of campus, you're out of mom and dad's house. You've got this newfound freedom, and boy, you just get hit with everything. And, you're making really key decisions in those first couple weeks that can affect your life for the next 5 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. They say, what is that line? You become most like the 5 people you are closest to, something like that. But it's like, my gosh, if you get on your campus and none of your friends are going to church, it's only a matter of time before you just stop going. You know what I mean? So we have to strengthen that connection, and we want to get them introduced into Catholic community and find some Catholic friends as soon as they arrive on campus, because they're not alone. You know, all of these other groups are loud, but we're authentic, we're solid, we've existed for thousands of years. So
you have, or the church? I know you mean the church.
Well, some days it feels
kidding.
like I have. Yeah.
Well, it's very easy to get the information. I'm just kidding you. NewmanMinistry.com, and then just go to the connection section. It's right up there in the main bar of the website. And it's great because it has these adorable videos of young people on college campuses, but then also there's some nice little boxes explaining what you do and how to follow up. And then there's great testimonies. And one woman saying, my daughter found her lifelong friends and kept her faith. And so you've, over the past 15 years, have really been connecting literally hundreds of thousands of students to faith communities, right?
We have, hundreds of thousands. And, you know, it started as a program through the Sarah Club, and we took it over in, around 2012 and really brought it into what it is today. And just, you know, it's been really effective. Like, we work in about 650 Catholic high schools. And then this, like 2 weeks ago, we just sent out hundreds of thousands of mailers out to parishes all across the country. And we're having this faith, as we call it, a faith forward movement. But a lot of parishes are having this Sunday send-off this weekend or next weekend, where we really celebrate the graduate, get them moving off to college, and really make a big deal about it in the parish, because it is, it's a big deal for these students moving off to college. And we just want to be there to support them as a church, as a community. And so it's been highly, highly successful. And, you know, you look at it from a campus ministry perspective, if you're sitting there on day one at a university, you just look around, you're on the quad. A lot of us, we go out, we set up tables, and, we're fighting all this noise, and we can't even tell who's Catholic. And so this program totally changes that. Now we have warm leads. You know, we know who some of these people and some of these students coming in are, and we can reach out to them in a very strategic and thoughtful way.
So, Matt, are you available, and I think you are, but reiterate that, available to do presentations at parishes if people want to learn more about this, to make sure that they can send their kids off the proper way?
My job these next 2 weeks is to ensure everybody that is Catholic makes it into a campus ministry. And if that means I'll do whatever I got to do to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Because this is such valuable information. I would love to see this in all the different church bulletins and giving this a link maybe. And my pastor is really techie. He puts out a great e-blast every week with all kinds of great resources for people. So I'm going to send this to him as well to make sure he puts it in his newsletter, because I think parents are busy, especially if they're getting ready for their kids to go off to college, and they may not realize that this is available.
Yeah, I agree. We're endorsed in 120 different dioceses, so we're kind of working through those areas. But any noise that anyone out there can make in regards to this, ask your pastor, ask your church, ask your community. Let's get these kids transitioned off to college.
Amen, brother. Matt Zerrusen, who's president and CEO at Newman Ministry. Go to NewmanMinistry.com and then check Newman Connection. Pass it on. We'll be right back. It's our Italy Shrines and Wonders segment. This morning we're giving the extra segment to my bestie Joni in Rome. Joan's Rome. We were emailing back and forth, as we always do, in preparation for our Wednesday segment. And I said, you know what? There is just too much good news and too many exciting things going on. And the young people, because we call this segment Shrines and Wonders, based on my book, Italy Shrines and Wonders, which I'm glad to say Joan endorsed, has, a lot of shrines, all the different events that they're doing. They're going to a lot of shrines and amazing places and learning more about their faith. So I don't know where to begin. There's so much great stuff coming out of the Eternal City. So I'm just going to let you start us, because I love the Holy Father's catechesis on social media and communications. That was my lead story this morning. So what's it like there in the Eternal City? I'm missing it already.
Teresa, it is totally palpable. I mean, all I can say is there's one way to not know the Jubilee is taking place in Rome, and that's to never leave your house. Because if you go outside, anywhere near the Vatican or the center of the city, the sheer numbers, I haven't seen a published number, so far, but I know 500,000 minimum are expected. But the city is filled with the young people walking around, flags, banners, scarves, T-shirts, and then songs, being sung in unison, and prayers said aloud in unison, the rosary in different languages. But the young people are they're euphoric. They're so joyful. They're so happy. And a lot of them are, they're not staying anywhere near the venues that they have to go to for Mass. Or today, of course, was after a month, the first general audience. But getting around has to be tough. But I'll tell you how things got to me. Last night, I decided to go to our favorite restaurant, La Vittoria, for the simple reason it was the owner, Claudio's, birthday. And I just thought, go down, say hi, have dinner there. So I get there, and the young waiters are all, "Oh, Joan, this is not the best night to come." I said, "Why is that?" They said, "Well, as we were speaking outside, there was only room for a table for 4." And so they said inside every single thing was reserved, every seat and then some, for young people at 9 o'clock. It was about 8:15 or 8:20. Anyway, they did separate the 2 single tables. I sat down there, and it's a good thing because within the next hour and a quarter, Teresa, close to 1,000 young people probably walked by our table or on the other side of the street. Because, as you're sitting at La Vittoria outside, you can see that underground passage that brings people from the square. Teresa, for about an hour and a half solid, the young people were coming out of the square because here's what happened. And I didn't know this when I sat down for dinner. I knew there was a Mass for young people inaugurating the Jubilee, and that was going to begin at 7 o'clock with Archbishop Fisichella. Well, guess who? It's over 150,000 at this Mass. Guess who surprises everybody by walking in to St. Peter's Square and then getting on the Pope-mobile? Pope Leo. He was it was not on his schedule. I mean, Archbishop Fisichella was as surprised as any of the young people. We had a rock star wearing white last night. He did the whole of Via della Conciliazione because those people never even got as far as St. Peter's
He went up
Square.
and down the Via della Conciliazione?
Yes, the whole thing in Pope-mobile, the white Jeep. And then he went down within St. Peter's Square and just kept circling that. Everyone was just going crazy. And if you wanted to see flags and banners and everything else, every single person. Well, again, nobody expected this. And had somebody kind of thought, hey, listen, maybe the Pope will surprise us. But nobody expected it. So when the kids were filing out of the square, because some of them, in fact, I met a priest from Ireland who said he missed the first part of the Mass. He said getting in the square was so tough. And then getting out, you and I have gone through this, getting out was almost as tough as getting in. So, an hour and a half after Mass had ended, they were still pouring out of St. Peter's Square. But with a happiness, with a joy. And as the flags would come up, I talked to people last night from A to Z, Austria and Zimbabwe, and in between, Poland, Mexico, England, Ireland, Portugal, France, Croatia, the Philippines, and Venezuela. Okay, I had to write this down because I knew I'd forget it. So, and then at one point, a bishop, you could tell by the pectoral cross, a bishop and a priest sat down 2 tables over. And so a friend of mine who was dining with me, we both kind of looked and smiled. And he said, I know you very well. He said, you're Joan from EWTN. I follow you all the time. And it turned out his name was Bishop Peter Collins of East Anglia, England.
Wow.
So, well, then we had conversation for the rest of the evening. But get this. I'm sitting at my table. I just knew he was from East Anglia. I didn't know his name. So on my phone, I researched Bishop of East Anglia, and his picture and name come up. While they come up, a young man stops right next to my table, and he looks at me and he says, "Oh, are you from East Anglia?" Excuse me. And I said, "No," but pointing to the bishop, I said, "He is." And the young man said, "I know, he's my bishop." So there were a whole bunch of young people from East Anglia. And the evening went like that. There was a priest from Ireland, Father Mandan, who came over, and he said, I've always hoped when I was in La Vittoria I would meet you. I've been a fan for years. So just meeting people, the younger people, many of them did, and do follow EWTN, but just the sheer joy on the faces of these young people, their delight, their happiness at being in Rome. And again, the biggest surprise of the day, I think had they gone home, last night, they saw the Pope and they were overjoyed. Yeah. And then, of course, a lot of them were in the square this morning for the general audience. But here's the thing: events are being planned, have been planned for all over Rome. In over 300 churches in Rome and on the periphery, events are planned. Not only liturgies, but different language groups meeting, praying the rosary. Certain relics are on display. And this morning I went to the Church of San Marcello, which is on the Via del Corso. That's the big street, or
I love that
narrow street.
Yep.
Yeah, in the center of Rome, beginning at Piazza Venezia.
And going to Piazza Repubblica. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yep.
Some Catholics and Christian groups got together and created a center dedicated to Blessed and future St. Carlo Acutis within this church. The young people, because I went there to meet a young man whom I interviewed for my weekend radio show, Johnny Verba, because he created a 1,000-piece mosaic.
Okay, hold that thought, because we have to. I know you're going to post the pictures today after our interviews. We've got an exclusive here with Joni. But by the way, I encourage people to look for the video of the Pope going up the Via della Conciliazione. I can't remember the last time that's happened with a Pope, because that's such a long street. But what a cool video to see the Holy Father going up the Via della Conciliazione to St. Peter's Square in the Pope Mobile. We'll be right back. Told you we needed 2 segments with Joni. I brought her on this morning. Joni, it is so exciting, and we get to see this a lot firsthand because we're blessed to be able to do what we do and cover various events. But the excitement, I just kept playing during the break while you were talking, that video of him going up the Via della Conciliazione. That was just the coolest thing. That street is quite long, and even though there's been some reconfiguring in terms of the pedestrian area, you think of the Tiber River, and then you think of going all the way up. And I remember because we ran there when they announced that they had a pope, and we saw the white smoke, and we ran there, got in the cab from Trastevere, and then stopped as close as we could get, and then just ran like crazy and ran mostly up to the main portion of the street as close as we could get to St. Peter's for the announcement. But that was
and then the day,
so cool.
The day of Francis's funeral, and then the day that, as you just mentioned, that Leo was elected, and then, of course, the day that his pontificate began. There were people who never could even reach the square because the numbers were so big. And so they were lining Via della Conciliazione, and they had either 1 or 2 on each side of the street, huge, those mega screens for people to see what was going on, because you can be so far back on Via della Conciliazione, the Pope looks like a white dot, in the background. Right. So it's a remarkable, and I love the name of the street. Conciliation,
Yes, exactly.
Conciliation Street. Mm-hmm. So, but the young people are learning to get around the Vatican, and there, as I said, so many churches in Rome that are opening to various groups. Some some are language groups, but there's a huge program. And what's impressed me and others, I was just talking earlier with Jesse of Home Baked, and things seem to be orderly. Each group, each leader of a group seems to know where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be. And Teresa, this morning when I went to the Church of San Marcello to meet Johnny Verba, who did this 1,000-piece mosaic of Carlo Acutis, depicting his face, you walked in the church. If someone had blindfolded you, you would have thought there was no one in church. You could barely hear people breathe, and there were several hundred. And they were waiting in line, which I did. I kind of broke into the line. They were very nice. Huge, long line, because there's a beautiful relic of the pericardium, the outside part of that goes around the heart, of Blessed Carlo Acutis, that Monsignor Tony Figueiredo, who works with the bishop in Assisi, he had that, and he just stood there. I don't know how long he'd been standing there, but he blessed every single person. He had a specific blessing for every single person that came. And then there were a whole bunch of little pieces of paper and card on which you could write a message, and the message, a prayer or plea, those will all go to the tomb of Carlo Acutis in Assisi. So that church was dedicated to him. This Catholic and Christian organization came together for these 3 days, 28, 29, and 30. Today's the last day that this is taking place. Or no, 29, 30, and 31. So that, if you go to that church online, I think it closes at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And that's where I met Johnny Verba, VRBA, a very unusual name. And so we were brought together by a mutual friend of ours and a nephew of mine in Arizona. When he found out that his friend Johnny was going to be coming to Rome, he said, I think you better look up my Aunt Joan. So his wonderful story of this 3 by 4 foot 1,000-piece mosaic, and I will be posting pictures of that, and then my interview with him will air this weekend on Vatican Insider. But just another marvelous story of faith, a man who's overwhelmed, a young man, who's overwhelmed by all the other young people that he's seeing. And how amazing is Johnny Verba? In his sophomore year in college, Arizona State University, he was teaching a business course to freshmen.
Wow.
But he said sometimes freshmen will come into universities. It can be a question that they've already done their military service, so they'll come in as a little older than the average freshman would be. And he said one time, here he was a sophomore teaching a 24-year-old freshman. So his is an amazing story, which I'll be telling this weekend, and then I'll have links to how he made. There's a video link of him explaining this mosaic of soon-to-be Saint Carlo Acutis.
Let me ask you a question, because we know that the canonizations aren't until September 7th, and I know many people there were hoping that the Jubilee of Youth, they had planned the Jubilee of Youth to end with the canonization of the amazing Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, but there doesn't seem to be any type of sadness hanging over because of that, and the fact that I thought it was beautiful that they allow people to venerate Pier Giorgio Frassati's body and his relics at Santa Maria Sopra Minerva. What an opportunity that is.
Oh, absolutely. That's got to be in my schedule, because he will be there until the 4th. And the funny thing is, I've been to Turin. How many times have you and I been together when there was the exposition of the Shroud, right?
Shroud, yep.
And I always went into St. John, and I always went up the left aisle, because there's a chapel dedicated to him with his coffin. I had no idea he was incorrupt.
You didn't? I did.
No.
Yeah.
I had never read it. Well, I ran into a longtime person who covers the Holy See. I won't mention who. We met by accident downtown the other day, and we were talking about this particular thing. Neither of us each of us had been to Turin. We've known for years who we were both overwhelmed by the idea that his body was intact. And think about it, 2 young saints. So Carlo Acutis, the first, what they call millennial saint, and then I think Frassati, I think it's 100 years ago that he died. Mm-hmm. And both of these young men, their bodies are incorrupt. So it is really pretty amazing And then as far as I know, though, for September, I don't believe that their bodies will be back. I think Carlo Acutis, to the best of my knowledge, will remain in Assisi. So you'll have the Mass. And I think, didn't we tell our listeners last week that we discovered that no tickets are being issued?
Yes. Now that I still don't understand that, but we'll see how that goes, because to me it's just going to make it more difficult for people. I mean, this is not their first rodeo. They do canonizations quite frequently, and they always hand out tickets. So I don't know, maybe they're not expecting as large of a crowd because they have so many here for the Jubilee of Youth right now. I don't know. But I will say this, if people are going to Rome, they should certainly try to make it up to Assisi, because it's not that far. Take the train.
Oh,
They have a beautiful train station in Assisi, and then you can just take the shuttle bus or a cab up to Upper Assisi and then visit St. Mary Major Church for the tomb. Now, that's a very, very small church, so that will be interesting, closer to the canonization. And I'll have to check it out, God willing, when we go back at the end of the month to see how crowded it is. But it's always crowded, especially lately. But it's going to be interesting to see how many people. But aren't they having some relics of Carlo Acutis brought in for the canonization on the 7th?
Oh, it might be the very same one that I got blessed with today, the pericardium. Because, how many other relics would there be?
That would be from that was the one that was in San Rufino, because there are relics of him in San Rufino, the main church in Assisi. And then, of course, the other relics down in St. Mary Major. A lot of people don't know that they're kept in there's also relics of Carlo Acutis in San Rufino. But either way, what a time for young people. And if you think about everything that's going on with social media, and you think about, there's so many similarities between Frassati and Carlo Acutis. They both, I mean,
and young people today.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, life has changed from Frassati. He didn't have any of the social media and other technology that Carlo Acutis had. But still, he was a young person, very, very wealthy family. His father founded the well-known La Stampa newspaper.
Yep.
But his father, I'm not too sure about the mother, didn't seem to understand the fact that Pier Giorgio would take his money, his allowance, because he had a good allowance.
Give it to the poor. Use it for the poor.
He'd give it to the poor, go out and help people. If you needed medicine, you were sick. In fact, he died contracting a disease, from someone that he was trying to help in ill health. But if you were poor and needed something, he was just always there. And his parents were like, especially his dad apparently, wait a minute, we want you to follow in the steps of, footsteps and run the newspaper and be part of society, etc. But that's not what his faith meant to Pier Giorgio. So both young men, different societies, 70, 80 years apart, lived their faith as they knew they had to live it. They had to be part of society, but in the sense of going out there and connecting with people who needed you, who needed your help, who needed your reaffirmation of faith. So both remarkable young men in astonishing times. And if you can't feel linked, as a young person today, with either of those two future saints, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah, and I would advise people, and I'm sure you would too, Joni, when you go to Assisi, when you go to venerate the relics of Carlo Acutis, to make sure you look above the glass tomb, because there are these beautiful images in the wall that are basically carved out in the wall. And there's one that I think is so important for the young people to see, of him working on the computer with a big smile on his face, and Jesus is in the background. So always being cognizant of the tools and how he was using them. And so hopefully that will be an encouragement. It's such a beautiful time. And this weekend is going to be, I'm sure, wonderful.
Oh, my gosh. Well, there's everything. I've published a lot of information. The city of Rome came out with a document about 10 days ago, which I felt was so important I translated it into English. It was all the statistics from the technology being used to how many portable toilets there are, to the fact there's going to be 5,000 civil, volunteers. They go into the numbers of doctors, nurses, firemen. How many people from the waste management company? There's going to be something like 20-some different work shifts for the people of the waste company, not only over the weekend at Tor Vergata University, but, here in Rome. The constant cleaning. You would expect maybe to see a lot of trash. I want to tell you, this city looks like it's been abandoned from the point of view of trash and things. But as you go downtown now today, for example, driving past or taking taxi past the Chiesa Nuova, a whole bunch of tents are set up. And if you know the colors, I saw a whole bunch of Red Cross tents. And then I saw tents with civil protection people. And then there were other tents that were simply information centers. And everybody's keeping everything clean. So that's a pretty good sign if there's 500,000 people. And I've heard numbers, but we aren't going to know until Sunday, probably Saturday night, of 1 million, for the vigil and the papal mass on Sunday. So just astonishing days, very uplifting. I think that's the best part of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Encouraging and uplifting, and encouraging to see so many young people so vested in their faith. I actually had a consultation with a young man last week from Tees, Italy, who was going by himself for the first time overseas, and he was a little nervous. And and I said, look, you're going to get there, and it's going to be the time of your life. And he was so excited to. And he said, I've got your book. I'm going to read it on the plane. He was so sweet, but he was so excited to be a part of this, and I know that's a general feeling. We look forward to catching up next week. Our own Joan Lewis, of course, with our update on Joan's Rome. And check out our great WordPress blog. All kinds of information. Those images of the mosaics of Carlo Acutis will be up later today. We'll be right back. All right, my friends, I'm just saying, you don't want to miss the next hour on EWTN Radio Extra. We have the one, the only, amazing Sister Dierdra Byrne joining me live. She also is going to be on live with Father Mitch tonight at 8 o'clock, of course, on Father Mitch Live on Wednesdays. We're going to talk about discerning the will of God throughout life. It's a process. It doesn't end. You continually ask the Lord, am I still in your will? We'll talk about that with Sister and, of course, her great work in so many different areas of the world and of the U.S. and her great pro-life witness. She is a dynamo and huge, huge fan of her ministry, and we will talk with her for 2 segments. Then 2 cents, we're going to revisit what the Holy Father said for the prayer intentions for the month of August. Oh, and did you know that July has 31 days? I texted my boss, Jack Williams, and teased him and said, guess what? Anyway, I don't know why I said that, but I did. But I corrected it. And I know you are listening closely, friends, because a few of you emailed me and said, July has 31 days. Anyway, as we wrap up July 30th in our 2 cent segment, we will go back to Italy and take a look at the beautiful prayer message of the Holy Father and how it ties into the message he had to the students to whom he was speaking, all about communication. So as Joan said, a lot of beautiful things going on. And you can follow it all by just following us, because we have a great Rome Bureau, and they'll be putting out great stuff along with all the different people we have with the Register and Catholic News Agency that are there covering it. Just a delightful time, and so excited for our young people to have these great examples of Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, who will be canonized on September 7th. We'll be right back. You don't want to miss Sister Dierdra. She's in studio with us. I'm so excited. Well, today, and we'll talk more about this in the 2 cents segment coming up, saw the conclusion of the Holy Father's catechetical series on the public life of Jesus, which he described as being marked by encounters, parables, and healings. Addressing the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square for his weekly general audience, the Holy Father brought everyone's attention to the present, noting that this time in which we are living also needs healing. He described today's world as being marked by a climate of violence and hatred that deeply wounds human dignity. He said our society is growing ill, not from isolation, but from a kind of overload. We are hyper-connected. bombarded by images, sometimes false or distorted. Social media, he warned, has produced a kind of emotional bulimia, where too much input leaves us exhausted and confused. In the midst of this, many feel tempted to shut down, continued the Pope, and he said we might even prefer to feel nothing at all, noting that words themselves are increasingly fragile. Bringing his address to a close, the Pope reminded us that true communication is not only about being effective, but rather it is about healing, about not hurting others with our words. Speaking correctly is the beginning, he says, of a journey, and this journey leads us to the Lord himself through his passion and cross. Let us ask the Lord, he concluded, to heal our way of communicating and to help the church remain a place where every person can hear his word, be healed, and become a messenger of his salvation. And the prayer intentions for the month of August, Pope Leo says we need to, for societies where coexistence seems more difficult, might not succumb to the temptation of confrontation for ethnic, political, religious, or ideological reasons. In the prayer, the Holy Father recalling that we stand in the presence of the Lord in need of his peace. In other news this morning, Michael Kastner tells us Harvard University has turned over the records of thousands of employees to the Trump administration.
A Tuesday email from Harvard's Department of Human Resources says the Ivy League school was providing the employee data as the Department of Homeland Security conducts a review of its operations. Harvard has been targeted by the Trump administration over allegations that it's allowed anti-Semitism to go unchecked on campus. I'm Michael Kastner.
3 West Virginia parents win the first round in their fight for religious exemptions to school vaccination requirements. Raleigh County Judge Michael Frobel granting a preliminary injunction, saying the state's compulsory vaccination law does need a religious exemption to be constitutional. State education officials stressing the ruling only applies to families, and these 3 families, and won't affect other students. We are beginning to learn more about 3 people killed in Monday's shooting rampage in Midtown, in addition to the fallen New York Police Department officer. Sarah Lee Kessler has more on that developing story.
43-year-old Wesley LePatner was a Blackstone real estate executive, wife, and mother. She was a Yale graduate who served on several high-profile boards, including the Metropolitan Museum, UJA Federation of New York, and the Abraham Joshua Heschel School. Julia Hyman, a 27-year-old Rudin management employee just 5 years out of Cornell University, was also murdered, along with the beloved lobby security guard, EWTN. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
And New York City police now say they're looking at a possible associate of the suspect behind the shooting that left those 4 people dead, including a police officer. Mayor Adams yesterday saying pieces of the semi-automatic rifle used in the killings were bought by an associate of the suspect.
It is undetermined at this time if he played any role at all in planning or carrying out this action.
Adams called it an evolving investigation. Reports say Tamura appeared to be targeting the NFL headquarters but used the wrong elevator. He also had a note claiming he suffered from CTE, a brain disease linked to playing football. And the body of the New York police officer killed in Monday's mass shooting in Midtown Manhattan has been moved to a mosque in the Bronx. A dignified transfer with scores of officers lining up to pay their respects to Officer Diderul Islam began late yesterday afternoon when his body was removed from the medical examiner's office. He was only 36 years old. He was off duty working a second job as a private security guard when he was shot in the lobby of the building on Park Avenue. He's a native of Bangladesh, and he served with the department for almost 4 years. He has a wife and 2 children and a 3rd child on the way. Purple bunting is now hanging at the 47th precinct where he was assigned. There is no word yet on services. Sarah Lee Kessler tells us Wednesday today, big 3-day number 3 of the heat wave that's gripping New York City and the New York State, actually. And Governor Kathy Hochul is urging New Yorkers to take precautions.
Hochul is urging New Yorkers to take precautions in the face of poor air quality and extreme heat that's making temps in the 90s feel more like triple digits. The governor reminding people to stay hydrated, limit outdoor activity, and head to a cooling center if they don't have air conditioning. She's also announcing that state parks, including those with swimming and cooling facilities, have extended hours during the heat wave to help New Yorkers beat the heat. I'm Sarah Lee Kessler.
It's been a long, restless night for folks in Hawaii, where a tsunami warning has now been reduced to an advisory. Tsunami alert triggered yesterday after a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Russia sent shockwaves across the Pacific Ocean. Local officials in Hawaii urge residents and tourists along the coast to evacuate and move to higher ground. No major damage reported, though some boats were pushed onto dry land. The West Coast was next up to see some waves. A sailboat that collided with a barge in Biscayne Bay, Florida, Hibiscus Island Monday, has been removed now from the water. U.S. Coast Guard Captain Frank Lorio says the crash killing 2 girls, a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old. 2 children are in critical condition still.
We were not comfortable answering that yesterday. Through some of our investigative work and some of the interviews we conducted, we do believe all of the girls were wearing life jackets. Again, our investigation needs to confirm that.
A 12-year-old girl and a 19-year-old Miami Youth Sailing Foundation camp counselor were not seriously hurt. The Coast Guard and the Florida Fish and Wildlife are investigating. Meanwhile, also in Florida, when the first school bell rings in less than 2 weeks in Broward County, cell phones will have to remain on the off switch. School board members did agree to revisit an update to the district's cell phone policy to allow high schoolers to reconnect during lunch.
I do agree that excessive use of cell phones is problematic. I also agree that use of cell phones during instructional time is also problematic. However, complete banning of the use of cell phones, in my opinion, is also problematic.
That's Dr. Jeff Holness, who argues that students today need immediate communication with loved ones, quick research, and stress reduction. Opponents, though, say it takes time for children to refocus on classwork. Another school board member, Adam Severa, says teachers have told him children using their phones during lunch costs them some precious time, as much as 5 to 12 minutes.
They got to get the kids to turn the phone off. Then they got to get the kids to refocus, and they got to get them to put the phone away. And all of this is costing our students instructional time.
The current policy for high schools there only allows cell phone use with the teacher permission for educational purposes. State law banning elementary and middle schoolers from using cell phones at any time during the day. The tariff deadline for China is being extended. The U.S. and China ended discussions in Sweden today. After 2 days of trade talks, a Chinese official said the tariff truce has been extended that keeps tariffs at 30% for goods sent from China to the U.S. It's currently unclear, though, how long that extension is for. The original deadline was set for August 1st. It all comes after a deal was reached with the European Union over the weekend. And consumer confidence edging higher in the month of July. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index improving 2 points as inflation fears eased a bit. The board's senior global economist noting a slight improvement in overall confidence, which continues to rebound from April's plunge. Purchasing plans for cars and homes slipping in July, along with vacation intentions and plans for personal travel. It is a Tuesday. No, it's a Wednesday, actually. I'm not doing well with the dates and the days today. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm getting sad because summer is slowly winding down. All right. Well, we are back, and we're going to talk about the beautiful message from the Pope today, his prayer intentions, and also his message to young people. And we'll even have our American Pope speaking in English the prayer intentions. How cool is that? Stay tuned. We're having people sign up and register already for the wonderful pilgrimage I'm doing with our very own Dr. Matthew Bunson next year, God willing, 2026, in the footprints of the popes. We are going to Castel Gandolfo, south of Rome. Rome, of course. We're going to a secret passageway. We're going to walk it between the Vatican and Castel San Angelo. We're going to the city of the popes, Viterbo. That is a gorgeous medieval city just north of Rome, about an hour north of Rome. We're also going to Orvieto for the Eucharistic miracle and to learn more about the contributions of St. Thomas Aquinas, how he wrote hymns, of course, for adoration in Orvieto and gave them to the Pope, and why the Pope spent so much time in Orvieto. And then we're going up to the city of Arezzo in Tuscany. So we had a lot of people that signed up for what we call a waiting list, but now registration is open. And if you go to my website, on both websites, teresatomio.com and travelitalyexpert.com, as well as on all my social media outlets. We're also doing an e-blast later today. You can sign up. And I'm so excited that Matthew is joining us because his book on Pope Leo, The Portrait of Pope Leo, is already a bestseller. And we're very excited because he's going to be talking about his book. I'll be talking about Italy's Shrines and Wonders. I'm also working on another book for the anniversary of the 800th, well, it's 800th year since St. Francis died next year in 2026, so hopefully that will be available too. But anyway, it's a really unique itinerary. There are places, now I've been to all these places except for the secret passageway because that's just reopened. And we're also working on getting a tour, which is really cool, of the Swiss Guard barracks at the Vatican. So really giving you an insider's look at the papacy. So again, this is next October. It's wide open, although it seems to be filling up because I received several emails this morning of people looking for the registration form. So please check it out. Go on teresatomeo.com, events. It's also on Facebook for both Tease Italy and teresatomeo.com. And then also travelitalyexpert.com on all of my upcoming trips. Okay, now speaking of the Pope, the papacy, and all that good stuff, the beautiful message from our Holy Father for the young people was just absolutely incredible. But first I want to play for you his prayer intentions for August because they do tie in so many ways to the beautiful message he gave the young people regarding the media, social communications, and our words, because it has to do with peace in the world and being able to coexist with people even if we disagree with them. Take a listen.
Let us pray that societies where coexistence seems more difficult might not succumb to the temptation of confrontation for ethnic, political, religious, or ideological reasons. Jesus, Lord of our history, faithful companion and living presence, you who never tire of coming to meet us, here we are in need of your peace. We live in times of fear and division. Sometimes we act as if we were alone, building walls that separate us from one another, forgetting that we are brothers and sisters. Send us your Spirit, Lord, to rekindle within us the desire to understand one another. To listen, to live together with respect and compassion. Give us the courage to seek paths of dialogue, to respond to conflict with gestures of fraternity, to open our hearts to others without fear of differences. Make us builders of bridges, able to overcome borders and ideologies, able to see others through the eyes of the heart, recognizing in every person an inviolable dignity. Help us create spaces where hope can flourish, where diversity is not a threat, but a richness that makes us more human. Amen.
I just thought that was so beautiful. I mean, there's so much in that. Obviously, he is talking, if you read between the lines and the emphasis about peace and all the division and the violence in the world. He's talking about Gaza. He's talking about the Congo. He's talking about other places that have been affected by extreme violence and very recently. But his words also apply to what he's discussing with the young people for the Jubilee of Youth, which is taking place, as you heard with Joan Lewis in the first hour, all week long. And it's super important for us to understand that these messages, while they are targeting the young people in particular this week, it's something from which we can all learn. I mean, how many of us may have lost it on Facebook and been really nasty with someone, or responded in a way that wasn't very Christian, tried to have a gotcha moment, or even in an email? It got so bad a few years ago for me when I would post different stories about different issues, especially when it came to abortion, that I literally backed away from engaging or responding. And I now use my social media posts, whether it be Facebook, whether it be X, whether it be Instagram, all these different things. I use it merely for evangelization and announcements. If there's an event coming up that I want people, about which I want people to know, then I post that. For example, I was talking at the top of the show and the top of this segment about the information now available on my outlets regarding our beautiful pilgrimage. I try to use it mainly as evangelization and avoid exchanging with people, because I find it takes you down a rabbit hole and it can suck you dry. And it's a shame, but I think you have to prioritize what's important. And for me, getting the word out about events, I think, is really important. And helping people understand that there are beautiful activities that they can attend to learn more about their faith. And I think all of us have had a time, as I said, where it's been difficult for us. Not only maybe we've, needed to go to confession for something we did online, even if it was just a nasty comment and we know it was wrong. Or maybe we've been the victim on the other end, on the receiving end. And if you think about our young people and how our young people use social media, and they are so good at it in terms of technology, which is not a bad thing, because look at one of the saints the blesseds that's being canonized, the youth saint, Carlo Acutis, who was an expert at communications, especially online. Now, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there has to be balance. And that's why I love the Holy Father's message for the prayer intention, because it ties directly in, as I mentioned, with his catechetical series, which he concluded today in the public life of Jesus. He addressed the weekly general audience today, filled with young people, by the way. He said, we are living in this time, a time that needs healing. And again, picking up on his prayer message for August, he described today's world as being marked by a climate of violence and hatred that deeply wounds human dignity. Our society, he said, is growing ill, not from isolation, but from a kind of overload. We are hyper-connected, bombarded by images, sometimes false or distorted. Social media, he warned, has produced a kind of emotional bulimia, where too much input leaves us exhausted and confused. In the midst of this, he said, many feel tempted to just shut down. I mean, and you feel that sometimes, right? Basta, I'm done, I'm out of here, I don't want to see anything, I don't want to hear anything. And then he makes a really super important point. We might even prefer to feel nothing at all, that it's easier to shut down rather than get hurt or be overwhelmed. And he says, with this in mind, we need to take a look at the Gospel of Mark, recounting the healing of the man who was deaf and mute. The man does not seek healing for himself. He is brought to Jesus by others. These figures, said the Pope, can be seen in his image of the church, those who accompany others, especially when they have lost their voice or ability to listen. The Pope reminded us that true communication is not only about being effective. Okay, so it's not about, all right, what point can I get out there? How can I show that I know this about this particular topic? Rather, it's about healing, not hurting others with our words. And he says speaking correctly is a beginning of a beautiful journey, a journey that leads us to Jesus himself through his passion and cross. Great messages from our Holy Father. You can find them at CatholicNewsAgency.com to register, and also VaticanNews.va. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the second hour of Catholic Connection. Great to be with you. And whatever time of the day it is, it's always great to catch up with someone as dynamic and important in terms of evangelization and pro-life witness as the amazing Sister Dierdra Byrne, Roman Catholic religious sister, missionary, surgeon, and retired U.S. Army colonel. And as her bio says, despite her personal humility, which is very obvious, she's extremely humble. Sister has been a fearless advocate for the unborn, the chronically ill and disabled, and she has worked tirelessly to defend conscience protections for medical doctors. Now, I could go on, but if I give her a complete bio, it'll take time away from the interview. So, Sister, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on the program this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Teresa, for having me.
How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah? What you working on?
I hear you are in Orvieto. I wish I could be there.
Oh, I love Orvieto. It's so beautiful. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places on the planet. So what are you up to? Tell us a little bit what you're doing.
Well, I'm a religious sister in Washington, D.C., the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. Mm-hmm. our community, which is about 130 years old or so, is predominantly teaching, but our house in Washington is considered the medical house. So I am a general surgeon predominantly, and I do free surgery for the poor, still operating, still practicing, because practicing makes perfection. We also do the abortion pill reversal, which is, always a roller coaster ministry. But in the last 3 weeks, we've had 3 moms who have asked for reversal. And thanks be to God, each mother, the babies are doing beautifully. We just saw one yesterday because we were testing out a new ultrasound machine that we'd like. We're going to have to fundraise. It's a little bit expensive, but you can do 3D images on first trimester babies, which really opens the doorway for the mother to fall in love with her baby. We also do, we run a pro bono physical therapy and diabetic eye clinic all in our little house in D.C., and we support 2 beautiful ladies who do full-time sidewalk counseling at the horrific third trimester abortionist, Dr. San Angelo. So they go almost every day to pray there. So that's what we do in our DC. Plus, in between, we're adoring Jesus and the Blessed Sacrament. We have, we're a traditional community, so we have Mass every morning. We have adoration with morning prayer in the morning, and in the evening we have adoration. And then in the midday, we sometimes we're walking up to the Franciscan monastery because my 102-year-old mother lives with us, and so we try to wheel her up there.
102?
Yes.
Wow. Bless her heart. That's
yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Well, do you think you might live past 100? We sure hope so.
Me? Oh, I'm ready to go tomorrow, today.
No, don't say that. We need you. Well, listen, you're going to be on with Father Mitch tonight, and you're going to be talking about discernment. And this is such an important topic. What will you be focusing on this evening with Father Mitch?
Well, this is I didn't exactly know what we were talking about, so so this is good. This is always a good topic anyhow, because discernment brings us back to what's most important in our life, and that's the most blessed sacrament. And, our founder, Blessed Greco, said, "It was before the most blessed sacrament that I found the love of Jesus and the power of that love." And Mary is always our guide as well. And if people actually could recognize that treasure of the Blessed Sacrament and how much our Lord can work through us to help Him bring souls to Him, there would be standing room only in the chapel. But we have to try to work on bringing that secret out. So that will help young people to discern in what direction the Lord is calling them.
It's so important, though, a continued discernment, because I remember my husband's a deacon. He's a deacon in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And when he first started out in the diaconate, they told us that you're discerning now as to whether, and of course they're discerning too, the formation people, as to whether the deacon candidates are right for the vocation. But they always told us, and as a wife, you have to go through the program with your husband, that you're discerning all the way through. It's not, okay, I've discerned, I think I need to be a deacon, I'm going to go forward, and then it ends. And they say even after your ordination, you discern every single day. And I think that's true. That should be true for all of us, because I know I get up in the morning and my spiritual director told me to use my show, in addition to my prayers and readings and whatnot, to use my show as a form of prayer. And one of the prayers I say every day, sister, is, Lord, if I am still in your will, let this show continue. This is what you still want me to do. Otherwise, just, give me a sign that you want me to move elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But it's a constant discernment in our lives, isn't it?
Yes. It's a moment to moment. We're like little children. I remember where we always have to depend on our Lord. But I remember one time I think in Dallas. I was one of those trains that take you from a part of the airport to the other, and it was crowded. And a little guy, about 3 years old. And it got the train was a little bit rocky. He didn't look up. He just put his hand up, and the mother put her hand down, and they grabbed each other's hands.
Aww.
And I think that's how we're supposed to be, that we are like little children who reach out to Christ every day to know that He's carrying us through and guiding us. And I found in my own life, and especially in discernment, that it was when I finally emptied myself of my own desires.
Yep.
All of a sudden, things started happening, and it wasn't what I envisioned. It was something totally different, but it's always a joy.
That's the thing, though. You have to give it over to God. My mother, my family's originally from New Jersey. My mother had this really great, strong Jersey accent. And I was asked in an interview yesterday what the best thing my parents gave me or taught me. I said, obviously, first the Catholic faith, but my parents and my mother especially would say, offer it up to God and put it at the foot of the cross. But, you start there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, when you mentioned the word cross, it reminds me of, I always tell people that I was given a message, I am the sinner. I was given a message from a saint. When Mother Teresa was in town in 97, and I was in a wealthy Catholic in the D.C. area, had given her Learjet to fly Mother everywhere around the U.S., and so a bunch of us were up there kind of hanging out and fooling around before she arrived. And then when she finally arrived, I had a few minutes, precious moments to sit with her. And I said to Mother...
Hold that thought. We have to take a break. I don't want people to go away. So this is a nice tease. We're going to hear what Mother Teresa said to our guest, Sister Dierdra Byrne. When we come back, she's in the studio with us this morning. What a gift. We'll be right back. We're having a beautiful day. We are here at EWTN. We have an amazing guest in studio with us. What a gift to spend time with the beautiful Sister Dierdra Byrne. We're talking about discerning God's will and other topics, and you can check out our beautiful order, Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts. It is littleworkersofthesacredhearts.com. And there's a beautiful book all about Sister. It was written by a friend of mine, actually. Lisa Carson will mention that as well. But Sister, you were keeping people on the edge of their seats, as we say in radio, when you were saying that you had a very profound conversation with Mother Teresa. Tell us about it.
It was in 97, and she had just finished her time in Washington. She had received the congressional, an award given by the congressmen and women, and humbly she accepted it. And so she's on a plane. I was up there in the area of the plane, and the sisters gave me a few moments to just be with her. And because I was still discerning, I was perpetually discerning. I was a surgical resident still. I was still training, so I couldn't enter. But I sat with her, and I was saying, Mother, I was questioning about maybe whether she would be welcoming physicians and, where I could actually practice. And she looked at me and she said, keep your eyes on the cross. That was it. She had very powerful but simple messages that really cut to the core. And I tell people that, so a saint spoke to a great sinner, me, and I share with all you future saints that we must keep our eyes on the cross. And the Lord will help us understand what He wants for us. It may not be immediate, and also our Blessed Mother, she's our guide. And, she gave her life sacrificially like no other human. Her fiat really changed the world. It was before the Blessed Sacrament, with an open heart and sincere heart, that I personally asked, Lord, to whom shall I go? And so if we can just give a fiat, our yes to Jesus, to change, it will change the world.
Well, St. Catherine of Siena says, when you are whom you are meant to be, you will set the world ablaze, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And I think so many of us miss what we're supposed to be because we have an idea in our head, and we all do this, of, okay, this is what I'm doing now. It's working well. It's going well for my family, but we have this desire in our heart maybe to go in a different direction. But we kind of suppress it for a variety of reasons. That's why there has to be constant discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think, and again, a lot of people say, where would you or how would you best proceed with this? And I always tell everyone, go to the chapel spend a few moments before the Blessed Sacrament just thanking Him. The old mnemonic acts, adoration, thanksgiving, adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and then supplication, asking for prayers. And that little mnemonic will help you to guide you to spend time before Him. Because a lot of people will go into the chapel and say, "I'm not sure where, what to do or what to say." Remember Holy Mother Saint Teresa of Avila would talk about watching the hourglass
and also counting the bricks on the wall. I love her because I was named after her patron saint, so I take great comfort in this huge mystic.
Oh, I know.
Of which I am not, right, and not a saint hardly. And she was so funny, but she was so real. She talked about being distracted.
Well, Mother Angelica was the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
I love her
Amazing.
because of that, of her humanity. And you are a saint in the making, though. Don't say you're not a saint. You're a saint in the making.
We're all saints in the making. That's
Yes.
true. Thank you, sister.
Yeah.
At what point, and let's go back to when you were discerning your vocation as a religious sister, were there particular messages that enabled you to move forward? What was it, if people are listening and they're discerning maybe a vocation to the diaconate or even to another part of the religious life?
Well, I didn't really have locutions or anything, but my mother will say, and all moms know their kids the best, that my vocation started in utero. And so it wasn't really it was more of a feeling, a drawing of, a certain way of life. So my dad, who was a thoracic surgeon in Virginia, he was donating to a couple of missionary communities. And we'd get all these pamphlets. And I was the type of kid that would just stare at those pamphlets, and you could just feel, the excitement I could feel the excitement in my heart. It's very much like, I think, St. Ignatius of Loyola. Remember when he was injured and he's looking first at, thinking about his girlfriend, and then he would read books on the saints or read books about, read the Bible. And that excitement and that love was longer lasting when it was of God versus something that's not of God. So for me, that was sort of how it happened, in the sense that anytime I was doing something where I was forgetting about myself and doing things for others, it was long-lasting and joyous, and I nurtured that in high school, doing some volunteer work, and in college, volunteering to do some inner city teaching, or working with children with Downs. I mean, if you want to look at the eyes of God, look at a child with Down syndrome. Total love and joy. Joy. And no judgment at all. So that's how it happened. But because I went to med school, it was a miracle. That's a whole long story, but I went to med school, and then I went on and trained in the Army to help pay for the tuition. So that's how I ended up in the military. It was in 1978, I guess, when I signed on that dotted line. And then I did missionary work, and then went on to do surgery because I felt called to really be a missionary, and I felt surgery was really going to be the best way to prepare for that. And so...
You are fearless, though, in terms of your voice, especially for the voiceless. And of course, the talk you gave many years ago at the Republican Convention regarding life and the unborn, just phenomenal, and gave so many of us so much courage. What's the message you have, sister, for those in the pro-life movement today? I mean, we are doing a lot better. We're seeing Planned Parenthood facilities around the country shut down, defunded for a year. Other efforts, of course, the Supreme Court overruling Roe v. Wade several years ago. But there's a lot of work. We have to change hearts. That's the biggest thing.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head. We have to pray. We are simply God's instrument. He's in charge. Don't get discouraged. Keep up your beautiful, godly work. God will answer prayers in ways that are way beyond we could ever imagine. Yep. So you mentioned the RNC. I was in the chapel in 2020 in August. I was a little bit concerned about the rhetoric of the other side, who were touting to be Catholics but not really supporting life like a Catholic should. And so I sat in the chapel and I prayed, Lord, let me be your instrument, let me be your voice for life. in any way. I was actually saying it in a way of apologizing. I didn't feel like I was doing enough for him. And about an hour to 2 hours later, the White House called and asked if I would speak at the RNC.
Wow.
And I said, "Can I speak for the unborn?" And they said, "Yes, you can." And so that's how that unfolded. So when I was praying, I was thinking more about getting involved with 40 Days for Life, this kind of earthly level thinking. But God will take your prayers. You pray with an open heart and a sincere heart. He will answer those prayers in ways that you will never, ever, ever imagine.
It's incredible. It's incredible. That just gave me the chills, though, because I think if when we watched you, we thought for sure this was planned long term, because it was a very important event and you're such an incredible speaker. But to think, it goes back to originally about what we started to discuss, the importance of praying and discerning before the Blessed Sacrament. And God's like, okay, well, here you go. There's an event coming up, so bada boom, bada bing, sister, we got you there. But that was incredible, but such a direct answer to prayer, but in a very different way, right?
Yes, because I did get attacked a bit.
Shocker.
Had all sorts of mean names, but. After 29 years in the Army, having
seriously?
5 brothers, and I'm used to.
You're hardly a wallflower who can take some criticism. Yeah.
What I was going to say, I blocked a little bit about what I was going to say, but.
Talking about that it was a direct and very quick answer to your prayer, but very different than very different than you expected. Right.
It was anything that I had pre-planned. One thing, because our community is predominantly, we're Italian based. We're in Italy, in our mother house is in Acre, if you ever get down there.
Which is where? I'm not familiar with
southern
Acre.
Calabria.
That's where my father's family is from.
Calabria. So our Mother General was like, I had told her that the White House had invited me to speak on life, and she thought that was great. Brava, brava. But then when she heard it was at a Republican convention, she said, we don't do political things. And I said, the sanctity of life, the unborn, is not a political issue. It's a moral and a theological issue. And when it's the unborn in the womb of the mother being slaughtered, ripped, torn, it is a reflection of what's going on in this world. It's sort of like the center, the ground zero, the tsunami of what's happening with marriages falling apart, contracepting, the transgender ideology, euthanasia, which is now my new fight, by the way, euthanasia. So we have to nurture this, the unborn, because that will, if we can stop that, we'll stop everything else.
Right. But everything is political, and the Catechism calls for us to be voters, so that's political, and we're supposed to be involved in the public square. That's all political. Every single thing we do, we get out of bed and we go outside, and there's laws that are affecting every single one of us, so it's all political in one sense.
But as a religious sister, and that was like the big target, and people were threatening to take our nonprofit status away and all blah, blah, blah. I tried to express that this child, I know what I was going to say now, but this child, all children are made in the image and likeness of God, and we had to protect it from that very beginning, from the womb to the tomb. But
I mean, this gift that you have in speaking, I mean, you're so multifaceted in the gifts that the Lord gave you.
I don't feel like I have that gift, but I do want to say one thing.
Sure, go ahead.
As a physician, I always prayed that I would have the opportunity to say that life begins at the moment of conception. I always ask God, please give me the chance, wherever I am. And because if you look on the OBGYN, the academy will say life begins, after that. Everybody's kind of come up with their own definition of when life begins. But it's so clear that life begins at the moment of conception that I wanted to say that, and the Lord answered my prayer above and beyond being able to say that at the RNC.
Well, Sister, thank you for spending so much time with us this morning. I know you have a busy schedule at EWTN. What a gift you are. Stay strong in the Lord and don't lose heart. I know you won't. But I also want to refer people to the beautiful book written all about you with my friend, Dr. Lisa Karzan. I know her very well from southeastern Michigan. She's an amazing pro-life warrior. Sister, Soldier, Surgeon. And we have that on the EWTN Religious Catalog. And, of course, we'll be plugging that on EWTN as we always do, including with the appearance of Father Mitch. Thank you, Sister. Pray for me and Deacon Dom. And you go, girl. You keep speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves.
God bless you.
All right, my dear. Wow. What a gift she is. Thank you, Sister Dee Dee. We love you and we love your ministry. And we're so blessed to have you in studio with us here on a Wednesday morning. We'll be right back. Wow. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed talking with Sister Dee Dee. I hope you enjoyed listening. What a gift she is. What a powerhouse. All right. So coming up tomorrow, our friend Michael New is going to talk about the judge that tried to force funding of Planned Parenthood. And we're also going to talk about the fact that Michael and his expertise in the background and the research and everything he does for pro-life, he believes that pro-lifers are going to win in the end and that they should win on appeal of this effort by this judge who was handpicked by one of the very liberal pro-abortion administrations. Also, speaking of life, we're going to check in with our friend Dr. Patrick Castle. He's with Life Runners, and he's just amazing. You talk about somebody with energy. I always see him at the March for Life, and these Life Runners are all over the country and all over the world. And what's nice is you don't have to run. You can actually walk for life, okay? Or March for Life, as we do in Washington every year. But you don't want to miss the show tomorrow because there are two very, very important interviews. First, Michael New in the first hour, and then Dr. Patrick Castle in the second hour. And, of course, because it's Thursday, Father Mitch Pacwa will be back with us for Cultural Connections. I mean, there's so many stories to discuss with Father Mitch, including the developments in the Middle East and the situation in Gaza. There are some stories that are breaking now about some additional problems with the terrorist group Hamas and how they're treating their own people and using them to get sympathy and support. We'll discuss with Father Mitch all that, Michael New and Patrick Castle on a Thursday morning edition. Ciao, ciao. Have a good Wednesday.